Okay, well, after receiving a few requests for some information regarding the Hoth deck, I played against TGO last weekend. I decided to go ahead and make a quick little video detailing the deck and detailing the cards within. So, just real quick from the homepage, if you come down here and look at the top tier Gaming vs. Flip the Force Octagon Stream Round 2, that is where you will see the deck take place. It is used in the second video here. So if you want to see the deck in action, just click there to check it out. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the deck builder here. And again, to use the deck builder, you want to make sure you choose a side. We're looking at dark side. And let's see, we'll go over these objectives first. There are 2 copies of the Killing Cold within the deck. A lot of you guys are pretty familiar with the objective set, but I'll go over some things real quick. Killing Cold is obviously ridiculously good at removing damage from your objectives. It is very good at keeping your objectives alive. A lot of this deck's strength is using tricks and abilities to keep your objectives in play for as long as possible. Several of my early sessions with the deck, it was very, very easy to maintain completely healthy objective sets throughout the course of the game. Particularly, you want to try and keep the Vader's Fist objective and the General's Imperative objective undamaged for as long as possible. Killing Cold is very good at doing that. Next up, we get 4 Ice Trompers. I'm not actually a big fan of Ice Trompers. I know lots of people do like them. I do not. They are a 2/2, pretty standard scrub little guy here. However, he does come with that really neat ability that he can damage a unit and kick it out of an engagement. Things to note is remember that this has to be a attacking non-vehicle unit. So you can't do it when they block. You can only do it when they attack. Just things to remember there. He's very good against a mains deck, but if your opponent is playing some form of vehicles deck, this is a pretty easy card to throw away. Fear is not a card that I like to actually spend 1 resource on. I like that it's 4 Psychons, but that is about it. It can obviously be useful in certain situations, but it's not a card that I ever rely on. Desolation of Hoth is absolutely ridiculous. It completely combines with the Killing Cold to keep your objectives free and clear of damage. But what's nuts about this is that you can remove any and all damage from the objective, and that's just insane. I've had a number of games where it will take 4 damage off of 5 damage capacity objective, just completely heal it. It's just completely absurd. It also has 3 Force Icons, so if you really have to throw it into an edge, you can, although I don't think you ever want to do that. And then Twist of Fate. Everybody knows how good Twist of Fate is. This deck, it doesn't win a whole lot of edge battles, so it needs to win certain ones, and Twist really helps to do that. The next Sith objective is going to be Vader's Fist. There's 2 copies of those. Obviously, you guys know how bonkers the objective itself is. When it's undamaged, you can really jack up their hands by making them discard, by affecting their starting reserve. So having multiple Vader's Fist in the deck is always a good thing, and you always want to live the dream by getting 2 in your opening 4 objectives. If you ever have 2 in your opening 4, you will always use them both. Next thing it brings is 2 Battle of Hoths. Obviously, these are very relevant. They're 3 Force Icons for edge battles, and then they can also heal your Hoth objectives. So if you can't tell, we're 6 cards in, and we've have a tremendous way to remove damage from Hoth objectives, which is very clutch for this deck. Next up is 2 E-Web Heavy Repeating Blasters. These things are borderline worthless. If you're up against a deck that you need to kind of race with damage, like say Sleuth or like a Rebel Speeder deck, this can be useful, but 9 times out of 10 you should just throw it into an edge battle or discard it. It's just not going to do what you need it to. And then we get these awesome little 501st Troopers. These guys do not just hands down win you the game. They are really just core scrubs, but again, they have a nice little added bonus, which is they do extra damage against Hoth objectives. So these guys do give you Edge Blast, which is nice, but it's really that extra damage when going against Hoth that makes these guys worthwhile. If you don't have Hoth objectives, if your opponent doesn't have Hoth objectives, it's just not really worth it to put these guys down unless you just have to or have nothing else to do. They're just mediocre at best. I'm really not the biggest fan of them. They do combo well with Veers, who is in the deck, but that doesn't make them really good. It just makes them above average scrubs. So these 5/0 First Legion guys are just ridiculously good. Cost of 4 for 4 health and 2 Force Icons is fantastic stats, but that 4 non-edge unit damage is just insane. Chewie, Falcon, Redemption, Obi-Wan, all these cards that you could see in play, you might go up against, this 5/0 First Legion just shuts them down. So truly a great card. When you land it, it definitely puts your opponent on a very different path and different plan for getting damage through. So now over to the Navy objectives. We have 2 Unstoppable Advance. Unstoppable Advance doesn't do anything, but of note is the 2 resources that the objective gives. We'll go over here to this Aggressive Assault card. I do really like Aggressive Assault. I just typically have a hard time timing when to play this card. This deck typically has around 4 or 5 resources, so finding the time to spend 2 on an event is kind of complicated sometimes. But I do really like it. It's really great to shut off a lot of those objectives that run the while this is undamaged text. So it is very, very good. And you'll see it makes a special appearance in my game against TGO. Then we come over here and we have this guy, which is just absolutely insane. This Orbital Replay Station does a lot of work for just 1. Obviously, the turn you play it, it's like a free resource. It's like a freebie if you're going to follow it up with a unit that costs 4 or more. A vehicle unit that costs 4 or more. If you're going to play an AT-AT and you have this in your hand and you have 4 resources up, paying the AT-AT, you're golden, and then your next several turns your AT-ATs cost less. So it's also really good with the AT-AT formation. It's just a really, really good card. It's really powerful. You always want to see 1 in play if you can. And then we have the AT-ATs. The AT-ATs are just pretty much absurd. You know, the same cost and the same health damage capacity as Luke. The same damage icons as Luke for the most part. I think he has a blast non-edge, but you add shielding and the ability to get rid of enhancements on top of that, and it's just a ridiculous unit. And you get 2 in the objective, so you run 2, and as you can see, you get all 4 of these guys here. It's just so good. It's in a sleuth-dominated meta. If a lot of the people at your local scene are playing sleuths or blockade runners, obviously it's not as good because there are no 2-drops in this objective set. But outside of that, against a mains variant deck, against another Hoth deck like Rebel Speeders or something, it is just so good. And then you have AT-AT Assault Formation, which, as I keep learning, it does something new every time I play it. So it's just so good. It's free blast damage, all kinds of greatness involved. It's truly, truly fantastic. So highly, highly recommended to splash on the board. You don't have to play it till late game. When it does come down, you're going to do a lot of damage. It's just totally worth it. In the later parts of the game, it can really turn the game around. It does a lot of damage. If they're playing Hoth, it does even more damage, and it has shielding, which is just absolutely bonkers. Next up is the General's Imperative, which we are playing ×2 as well. If you can't tell, all of our objectives here, they all share the Hoth trait. So with General's Imperative, you also get some more Battle of Hoth, which is really awesome. That takes you up to 4, which is just fantastic. Additionally, you get the Turbo Laser Battery. I've yet to ever play Turbo Laser Battery, and then just thought, wow, that changed the game completely. Instead, it's typically, I've got other ways to kill enhancements, so I'm not too worried about Turbo Laser Battery. It's just too restricted, but it can come in handy, I guess, every once in a while. Most of the time, you're just going to throw it away. Veers is just ridiculous. 3 for 2 is just okay. The 1 resource is great, but the tactics and the blast is really, really good. And there's so many walkers and so many troopers in this deck. I think, in fact, only the Ice Trumper and Veers are not walkers and troopers. So he will benefit a plethora of cards in this deck. So very, very useful, and can definitely be used to lock down the board. I'm actually not the biggest fan of the Blizzard Force Chicken Walkers. I think they're kind of irrelevant most games. I don't like things that cost 2 and only have a health of 1. Even with shielding, it's just not that great. I do like the blast damage for sure, but I'm just not the biggest fan. I typically have better cards in my hand to put down. That doesn't mean you should always throw them away. It just means majority of the time I think you should throw them away. And to put one more bit of focus on that, as a light side player, you should never fear this card. If your opponent is playing this card, you should have plenty of ways to kill it and deal with it, and it won't matter. And that's why, as a dark side player, I'm just not all that happy to see it in my hand. A good light side player can deal with this card perfectly fine. So next up, we have Sabotage in the Snow, which obviously gives us a neutral Hoth location, keeps with the theme. It takes us up to another Battle of Hoth event, which is fantastic. And it brings 2 forward command posts. Now, I will spoiler this out, that this is the only resource in the deck outside of the starting. So the deck cannot always function and fire correctly on resources. So forward command center post, if you see them, you probably want to put them in play. Maybe some games you're doing okay without them. I don't know. There's not that many expensive things in the deck. But I like to have it in play. If you look over at the units here, you have 4, 5, 6, 10 units that have shielding. I'm sorry, there's actually another one here with this. So 11 units with shielding. That's a lot. That's almost half the units in this deck with shielding. So the forward command posts are incredibly relevant and will probably win you games more often than not. And then it comes with these 2 Stormtrooper guys here. You've got a Snowtrooper and a Snowtrooper. They're both troopers. They both benefit off of Veers. So it's again just a lot of synergy within the deck. And both these guys have only unit damage, which is fine because that's what you kind of want them for. You want them to sit back, hold your line, and take care of things that are coming in. So they're really, really good at doing that, especially this guy. He's just ridiculously strong, and that's why it's in here. It's in here for the forward command post and these guys. They're really, really good stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of synergy, and I'm sure you're seeing all this synergy. You've got all these troopers, you've got all these Hoth locations, you've got all these battle Hoths, you've got all these shielding abilities. There's just so much. And then the last we have is the snow. We have Shadows on the Ice. And you'll see it gives us 2 resources, which is great. It gives us our last Hoth location, which is fantastic. It gives us another Battle of Hoth, which takes us up to 8. It also gives us these 2 fantastically good cards. These things are ridiculous. You obviously will always have a Hoth objective in play, so you can always use them. They are free, and it literally just taps down one of their units for no cost. It is fantastic. It's any enemy unit. It's not restricted to vehicles, characters, anything like that. You can literally just lock them out of attacking for a turn, which is just absolutely fantastic. Let's see. The other things it gives you are obviously these amazing guys here. These Wampas will always be free. That's just how they roll. You'll always have 4 objectives in play that are Hoth, so no matter what, these guys are freebies. Great health, great unit damage, and you can't go wrong for free. I don't think this card should exist. I think a free health of 3, 2 unit damage is bonkers. I don't think there's any downside to the card, and I truly don't think it should be there. In fact, based on this deck, everything in this objective set is free. The Wampas will always be free, the Succumb to the Cold is always free, and Battle of Hoth obviously doesn't cost anything to play either. So you just can't go wrong with that objective set in this deck. It's just ridiculously powerful. So to go over just a few minor things here, obviously if you haven't noticed yet, we have 2 for Sith objectives, we have 2 for Imperial objectives, that's an even split, and then we have 2 neutral objectives. I'm sure I'm going to take a lot of flack for that. However, I can assure you, if you start in Imperial Navy, as you have to because of Unstoppable Advance, you will be perfectly fine. You will not always see your Sith objectives. That is 100% true. You will have games where you cannot play any of your Sith cards. But if we look at the stats real quick, you will see that only 10 Sith cards in the deck, so 1/5 of your deck you cannot play. While I understand that might be a big deal, you have to also remember that's 3 Force Icons, that's 2 Force Icons, that's 2 Force Icons. So out of those 10 cards, 6 of them have great edge focus icons. So it's not that big of a deal. Not being able to play the Sith Trooper is not the end of the world. You will be able to win off just these units. It is more than possible. I can assure you. So do not fear it. You will always be able to play your Navy cards. That is the crux of the deck. So that is where you want to be for affiliation. I totally understand this looks like a horrible split. It is not nearly as bad as it looks. Play the deck a few times. I assure you, you'll be surprised. I will tell you that in a local tournament, I made it to the final cut. I was the top seeded player going into the final round, and in the cut to top 2, we did a final playoff match. This deck coughed up no Sith resources on my start, and I still dominated the opponent. He did not get a single objective destroyed as a light side. So it can not cough up any Sith. It's possible. It will lock you out of 10 cards from your deck. I assure you it's perfectly fine if that happens. Winning games with this deck is not dependent on having Sith objectives in play. That's not how the deck is designed. The deck is designed for synergy and only synergy. And honestly, if you don't have Sith, the only real thing that you lose that you really, really wanted was Desolation of Hoth. Everything else is perfectly fine to lose. So that is the deck in a nutshell. Like I said, if you follow the video link at the beginning, you can see it in action against TGO. And you can see how it performs. I might play it again once or twice, I'm not sure. I did put a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of energy into making this deck. It was what we were running before Escape from Hoth came out. I think if the Executor had not come out, this is the deck that we would have been on for Worlds. It is an incredibly powerful deck. It's a little slow against Sleuth. As you can see, there's only 16 cards that cost 2, and just off a quick look, it looks like 4 of those are non-units, so it looks like there's only about 12 2-drop units in the deck, and they're not the greatest and most powerful units. So it can be a little slow against Sleuth, that's for sure. But again, if Sleuth is not big in your meta, or if you don't mind losing a game here and there to Sleuth, and it's not like a 100% loss ratio to Sleuth. I've definitely beat Sleuth before with the deck. That's probably its roughest matchup. But Rebel Speeders, mains, any variants on those type in this deck will just destroy it, I promise you. So if you're looking for something that isn't Executor, that isn't Emperor, that isn't Vader, this is a very strong alternative in my opinion. There is a ton of deck synergy here. There is a ton of things going on. Make sure you know how all the cards interact with each other, because there's a lot of synergy. There's a lot of ways these cards act with one another. So give it a go, check it out. I highly recommend it. It might be a little bit more of an advanced deck to play. I would say it's not a complete funsies kind of deck. You really have to understand the inner workings and how to toss cards and when to toss cards. And it's not just a bunch of big units. So the goal is to keep damage off your objectives for as long as possible. And you should rarely lose units if you do it right as a result. So anyway, that's the deck. Hope you enjoyed the video, and make sure to check it out. Thanks again.